Welcome to a new episode. On today's episode, I'll be showing you the bike that I'm going to be using to cycle around Australia, and Ben and myself's new bike sponsor, Yoeleo. Introducing the Yoeleo R11. So for those that don't know who Yoeleo are, they're a Chinese carbon fibre bike specialist. Mick Cooper, he built this for me. I just had my bike fit last week, so it's all built to my measurements, hence why the seat is a little bit higher than usual. I'm a very tall rider. Test ride yesterday, but over the next couple of months I'll probably go back and do a re-bike fit, a re-measurement, and kind of adjust it as my mobility gets better and as my experience in cycling ability gets better. So we went for this bike because it's very lightweight. I kind of didn't really want to go for the aero setup because we thought it would be very, very aggressive. So for this cycle around Australia, we have the luxury of having a support vehicle with us, so we don't need to carry too much on the bike. So we don't have to go for a standard gravel bike or bike packing bike. So we have the luxury of being able to have a very light bike. The R11 is kind of built for hills. Australia is quite flat, but I still wanted to have something quite light for up the hills. So the setup we have here is the H9 handlebars, jumping from the Merida that my old bike, for instance, jumping from that, going to something like this where it's aero, integrated cables, so it's got a really neat setup. I've maxed out on the stem just because of my height. I'm 6'3", going on 6'4", so I'm a very tall rider, so I've had to lift the handlebars. Still got the standard seat. Took this bike out for a test run yesterday, 160 Ks, or the equivalent to 100 miles. The seats felt really comfortable, but I'll probably have to upgrade this to something else at some point. Carbon post as well, and carbon frame. Really strong frame, going from an aluminium frame to this carbon frame. I could feel the difference, not just with the weight, but when I was going up the climbs yesterday for my test run, it feels really strong. It feels like the power is really going through the whole bike. So I felt really comfortable on it yesterday. Like I said, I only did 160 Ks. We've also gone for disc brakes. Now, going from rim brakes to disc brakes. Originally, when we were going to do this cycle around Australia, I was definitely favouring rim brakes. And then I did a couple of wet rides in Sydney and realised that the rim brakes were virtually impossible to stop in the wet weather. So going for this choice of disc brakes, there's going to be potentially a lot more maintenance, but around Australia we have the luxury of having a lot of bike shops that we can kind of jump into and get spare parts and get things fixed if we need to. Got the GP 5000. I went for the tan wool just to kind of break up the stealth black of this bike. When we go away on the road, I'm probably going to switch these to gator skins for a little bit more protection from punches. Lucky enough, they sent out us some carbon bottle holders as well, which is great for weight saving. I'm going to be carrying 2 bottles, potentially 3 bottles on this bike. I'm thinking about is potentially put in a frame bag just so I can get to things a lot easier, and maybe a top tube bag. I don't want to carry too much stuff on this because we're very conscious of weight. That's why we have the support vehicle to be able to carry a lot of this stuff for us. But yeah, just a frame bag. I'll have a light on the front. My Wahoo Element Volt, which has been a godsend recently. The battery life's pretty good, but I'll probably use a external power bank to charge this to keep it going. And that's about it really. I mean, like I said, I've only been on the 160 ride yesterday, but the bike feels incredible. If you've got any kind of tips for additional setup, this will be changing a lot over the next 5 to 6 months as we come up to the ride. So I opted for the 50mm carbon wheels. Now, for a ride like this in Australia, there's going to be a lot of open roads. And this yesterday when I went out on the kind of test ride, they helped me glide along. I felt like I was putting in less effort on the straight. With the wind kind of taking these wheels, it's nice pushing along. With a side wind, yeah, you can feel it, but to be honest, if you're a fairly good rider, you should be able to keep it in a good position. This is the machine that's going to take me around Australia. So what things would I change with this bike? The only things that I would change are the bar tape, potentially the crankset. I'm going to change this to a power meter. It's going to cost quite a bit of money, and the seat as well for more comfort and size. I've got wider hips, so I'm going to probably change this seat. It's quite a narrow seat in a minute, quite a small seat, so that will be upgraded as well. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Leave some comments below for some tips on how to set up this bike and what I should name it as well. In my head I've got the name Blade, but hopefully you guys have got some better suggestions for names of this bike. Don't forget to like, subscribe and drop comments.